What's up YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to take one of your UI designs and update it with some of my feedback and suggestions for change. This design was submitted by Mateo. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted possible designs for me to review. I really loved the brand he established for this design, the colors and the assets for it, and I saw some opportunities to maybe make it even better, which I'm excited to share in this video. So let's dive in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'll duplicate this design so we have one to work off here. In our hero section, we have this white background color. The rest of the page is this tan. I really love this tan color and think we can use it for most of the site. These cards are a good enough divider between our blocks of content. For headlines, what we typically like to do is reduce the amount of space between letters and increase the amount of space between lines. This really gives things some nice breathing room. Now this heading font here is a Google font. Our paragraph is Montserrat, another Google font. And then later on down the page, we have Arial paired with Montserrat. These two sans serif fonts aren't different enough in style to justify using two different fonts. So maybe we can pull in this heading font later on down the page. I think we can shoot for a headline font with a bit more character. One that I've used before is called Recoleta. Now this font has probably been overused, but I love how playful it is and how much it ties in with the existing brand. One thing I find is Adobe fonts are a bit more high quality than Google fonts. So one Adobe font I have used before is called P22, and it's very similar to Recoleta, and I really think it could tie in nicely with the brand. For our paragraph font here, Montserrat is okay. It has been used a lot, but one Adobe font that I really like is Sophia Pro. And what I like about this is how simple it is. If you compare like the A in this font compared to this super simple rounded A right here, or even maybe the T in this one compared to the T right here, it really reduces the letters to their bare basic form, which makes things a lot more playful. And I think it's going to contrast really well with this detailed heading font here. I'll even increase the font size to like 22 pixels. And then for our text, we have all this dark gray color for the text, except for the button, which is sort of this lighter gray. I think whatever our darkest color is, we should just use it for all these elements here to keep things consistent. And then gray is pretty dry, but I think we could introduce a little bit more color, maybe a bit more warmth into our type. And I may pull in this green right here and maybe just darken it a bit. And if we find a dark enough green, almost comes across as black, but it's really this greenish color that really introduces a lot more life to the design. And we'd want to do the same thing for this color here. Honestly, we'd want the same font, and instead of all caps, we can use this case instead, which is going to make things feel a bit more playful, maybe semi-bold, 22, and that's a bit more friendly already. I think I would want to pull this button away from the card. I liked how it was kind of nested, but pulling it away will draw more attention to it, and maybe make it a bit taller, which will make it more playful and bubbly and round it, maybe a bit wider too. And then that's looking pretty good there. One thing we had to decide on is our hierarchy. So what do we want users to look at first? And I think really the most important thing is for them to read the headline. So I'll probably push all these cards down a bit. And the headline is pretty busy. Like we have a lot going on in this heading here. So I think what we could do is maybe reduce the amount of words we have in it, and just maybe we break these into two separate thoughts and we create an animation that changes out the two headlines, that just switches between them. So for instance, if I take this longer one here, I'll probably remove this period and then maybe break this into two lines. And now this is a bit more impactful, a bit easier to read, more condensed. And I want this to be the first thing people see. So I may make it even a bit larger. Something around there is good. And then I may make the logo a little bit smaller. You hopefully already know what site you're on when you land here. And then that's looking pretty good. Now, instead of equal space between all these three elements, I'd want to push the paragraph text up a little bit closer to the heading. So we group together our text and then we separate out our call to action to draw more attention to it. And that's looking pretty nice there. Let me make sure that all of these elements are centered up. And then let's make sure it's centered there. And then I can grab all these shapes and bring those down a little bit. And I basically want to center these shapes kind of around all this text there. Now for the cards, some of the colors kind of clash with each other a little bit, like this red on the navy or this dark green on the dark blue. And I think if we try and reduce this to maybe just the brand colors, it might be a little bit cleaner. We can also update our type to that P22 font again. And then I'm gonna basically make this card maybe this color here. And that's already cleaning things up a bit. I may make this white for maximum contrast. And let me send this to the back a bit. I'm gonna make this black, and I'll back down the opacity on it so that way we have sort of this darker highlight of the main color. And let's bring these up a bit like so. And maybe let's bring them in a little bit to align with those words. And then now I can just bring the heading back on top. So that's a pretty good card state there. I'm going to go ahead and replace all of these cards with different colors. When we try out this yellow, the white text is really hard to read on top, so I may switch it out for our dark green there. All right, so we have all our different colored cards, and these are looking pretty nice, really tying in with the brand. One thing is these big gaps in between the cards make our eyes be drawn to each of these rows as separate items instead of treating all of these cards as one unit. So it's a little distracting because we're trying to figure out what to look at first. I think if we just push these all a little bit closer together, leave a nice gap in between them, but something like this, it may tighten it up a bit more. So we can do something kind of like this and then center all this up. So if we compare this design to our original design here, yeah, we're using less colors, but in a way it still maintains that playful feel. Even though we're reducing the amount of colors we're using, it really focuses our eyes on this headline and keeps everything tight together with the brand. Now, further on down the page, we have these 3 blocks of content, which we're using a lot of space for a little bit of information. So I would see if there's some way we can consolidate all this a bit. And also the text is a little bit small compared to the visual. So if we just basically increase maybe our font size here, maybe we increase our line space a little bit like so. And then I would make this font match sort of my heading font, but maybe this would be a bit smaller, not quite an H2, but something somewhere in that range like so. And maybe delete that. And we need to figure out how we're going to align all this. So I maybe apply somewhat of a grid here. 12 column is fine, so we can sort of see where we want to place this. And I may bring this over somewhere around here so it aligns kind of with that grid right there. And then the phone mock-up, we can even maybe make a little bit larger to where it fills more of the space around here, something like that. And then I may round off these corners a bit just to make them a little bit more playful, something like this. And then maybe push it over a little bit over like that. And then I think what I may do is basically add in a couple more headlines. So like these here could almost be like a slider to where we're rotating out all these headings and then changing out the images to match the headline. And it could be tied to hover or loop or maybe even both. But what I'll do is go ahead and copy this here. And then we can align these all up and then space them out, something like this. And then I may back down the opacity on them, something around here. And then maybe even create some sort of icon, maybe even just a little triangle could be nice, just to say which one is focused. So I may make that something like this, round off the corners a little bit. And then this could be sort of our active state right there. Other than that, I think we can maybe just center this up with the visual. So something around here is fine. And then we can remove these from that spot. And that is looking pretty nice for this area. May go ahead and back down the size of this just a little bit more. And then reduce this a bit. It's looking pretty good. And for our next section, we have these sort of benefits. So I don't think that this blue is really working too well with the tan. It's sort of clashing a little bit, but some sort of color breaker would be nice to break up these sections here. So far, we've had sort of the centered align section followed by left align, and now we're going back to another centered align section. And I think to break it up, instead of just maybe a hard line, we could do some sort of wave that sort of follows the empty space. So it wraps around the bottom of this phone and comes back up around that text. So it could do something kind of like this a little bit. And that could be like our section breaker. And I may bring this up here. And then since we're already using white, we could just bring in that pure white again. So something like this is kind of nice. And I'd almost want to just maybe reduce this a little bit, like make this not quite so drastic. Something around there could be kind of nice to just break things up. And then I think I'll go ahead and bring up this headline and this paragraph Bring these up a little bit, and then this can be a little bit larger, more like an H2 style, so something like that could be good. And then we'll make sure it's centered up, and then we'll grab our paragraph text style and just copy that over, and then make sure that's all centered aligned there. I think I can go ahead and bring up sort of these numbers. I'll just delete that for a second, and let's go ahead and slide this up over here, bring it to the top, and slide it up here. So I'll go ahead and paste in this style there, and let's go ahead and wrap this up something like this to where it breaks into 3 lines. It's a little bit tighter together. That could be pretty nice. So something around this, and then I'll copy that style and paste it here. I may increase the font size a little bit and make this more of like an H6 style and also semi-bold, and that could be pretty nice there. And then I would just basically do the same for all of these. So I'll go ahead and delete these for now and make sure this is centered up and center align it there and just copy it over. So that's going to go right here, right about there, and right about here. And then I may want to move this whole thing over a little bit, make sure it's centered within those 3 columns there. And then I'll just change out all the text. So that's looking pretty good there. I think I'll also just bring in this line a little bit to where it doesn't extend past the circles. And maybe we can basically paste in this and make it a little bit smaller and maybe bold it up a little bit and make this sort of our white color for our numbers, and maybe decrease the font size a little bit, something around there. Let's make sure it's centered, and then we can use that same style here. And let's do the same over here and also over here. Then I think we can go ahead and bring back in our button from the hero, the join the waitlist button. Let me go ahead and group that together real quick. Bring that over here and send it to the top, and somewhere around there is pretty good for this section. So after this benefits section here, we also have sort of our FAQs. And these are pretty wide right now. They're sort of spanning a lot, and it's going to be hard to scan your eyes over the whole width of the page to read the next one. So I think we could maybe condense them a bit, and I'm going to go ahead and delete all this for now. Let's go ahead and make a copy of all of this and bring it up, send it to the front. So I'll probably use the same font size, maybe my H2 here, maybe shorten this something like our FAQs. And then this paragraph, obviously make that style the same right there. And then the goal here is basically to be able to align this somewhere over here in this column, and then make it to where we can condense this, maybe to where each of these are only 4 columns. So I would just bring this over a bit, somewhere over here, and then bring the line in to where it's only the 4th column there. And yeah, those don't have to be perfectly aligned there. It can be offset a little bit in there. Something like this. And then for the type, we might want to use our paragraph styling again, but we can make it semi-bold right here. And then let's make sure that we use all our border colors, or the actual colors we want to use here. Something like this. And I may back down the thickness a little bit. And we're going to make sure we have enough spacing between this. It looks like it's 150, which is quite a lot right now. So we can back it down a little bit more. 112 might be okay. And then something like that. And let's just preview that. So as we scroll down our page, we have this hero, which is looking nice. We have sort of this slider component, really nice there. Our benefits are all tightened up, good together. And then our FAQ, I may actually just increase the space a little bit, actually more than that, just to make sure we have enough separation, and that's looking pretty good. I may back down the height of this. And then from there, we would just want to break it up into another colored section, I think, from here. So maybe our tan, we could introduce that again. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that tan color here. And yeah, that's our next section breaker. And we can use the wave again. Something like that is good. So the last thing we have are these testimonials. And right now my eye is really being drawn to this center gap right here as opposed to the testimonials themselves. And we have 4 of them on the page. We're not really sure, what to look at first with all of these, and they're kind of a bit small. So I think what we might want to do is focus on one at a time. Maybe we can put them in a slider. So I'm going to drag this up over here and bring it to the front. And let's see if we maybe use this style right here, which is more of like our H3 styling, and center this up and maybe even increase sort of the line spacing a bit, something like that, and then center that up. So we have a big, bold testimonial in the center. It's really the first thing our eyes are drawn to. And then under that, we can maybe bring in the quote of who it's by or the attribution. And maybe we use this semi-bold style again. And we can use our brand colors. So I might pull in this color right here. And I may make this even a little bit larger. Maybe we go up to 28 or something like that. And then above that, we can have maybe our stars. So I'll bring that up over here. And then I may want to push these a little bit closer together so they feel more like a unit. And then sort of center that up over there. And let's make sure this is all centered up. Let's see how that's looking. Yeah, so something tight together like that. And I may even increase the space a little bit on the top of that. And then we could try maybe putting these in a card of some sort. So maybe it's sort of a white card that spans most of our columns, and then we round off the corners a good bit. Something around here is fine. And then I'll just go ahead and send that to the back a couple times. And let's make sure that our background pieces are behind it. All right, so that's looking pretty interesting. We don't need these frequently asked questions anymore. Let's make sure this is centered up inside the card itself, something like that. And then for my actual slider arrows, I may just use sort of these circles. We'll go with a main green color, so something like this. And then I'm gonna try and nest them right around here, right around the center too. Maybe back down their size ever so slightly. And then I'll have one more all the way over here. I may go ahead and paste in sort of an arrow that I can use here. And then I'll just drag that in right here, like so. And maybe even make this a tiny bit smaller. And I'll go ahead and make a copy again, group it together, and actually just rotate this one for this side. And just to add a little bit more life to the testimonial, I may bring in some of these shapes again that we had up here. So I can just make a copy, drag them down over here, and then maybe only use a few of them. So this one I can make purple, maybe put it somewhere around here. This one, I'll just anchor it somewhere there, change out the color. We can keep this, maybe remove this one. Maybe we move this one down a little bit, and then maybe move this one down over the edge and then delete that. So just so we don't have too many of them. Yeah, so something like this is kind of looking pretty interesting. And just scattering a few shapes around, having the testimonials in there. And then from there, I think we can take all of this and I may just group it all together. I want to bring it up closer to the top. So we have about equal spacing between this part here and this part there. And then we also have a headline for this section here. And I think for that, we can go ahead and use sort of this semi-bolded style, but maybe make it a bit larger, something like an H5 or something, and center that up in here. That way our main focus here is on the quote and not on this heading there. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the grid for a second so we can see it a little bit more. And I think the last thing we have to work on is sort of the footer. So in this footer here, right now it's just this purple block and it's drawing a lot of attention. There's also sort of a lot of empty space on either side. So I think we can maybe refine this a bit more. So I'm going to delete that for now. Maybe we do sort of a side-by-side logo lockup like that. And then this could all be maybe one grouping of text. So something like this. And I'm going to copy over my paragraph style. But typically for these footer elements, what I like to do is make it a bit smaller, whatever we use here. So maybe it's like 18 and a little bit tighter, something like this. And that could be kind of nice, anchored over there. And make sure we keep the logo anchored towards the center. And then the social link. Right now we only have one social link, so it can look a little bit empty. But I'm thinking maybe if we apply this green border and then just back down the opacity, maybe somewhere around 30%. And maybe we can center this up. Yeah, just so it draws a little bit more attention, not too much, to the social icon. And I'll group it and put it somewhere maybe here. And let's make sure we center all of these like so. And then I may just use a very simple divider line to mark the end of this footer here. And then let's also go ahead and just copy the styling of it, so that way it's the same light green border on the top. And then that could honestly be our footer. Just keep it super simple since there's not a lot of information we need to show in this footer anyway. And then I'll just remove that, and then let's tighten up the height of this page a little bit, somewhere around here. And that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and just scroll through. We'll start with the original. So the main things we adjusted are drawing more attention to this heading, tightening it up a little bit, and then also adding more space for things to breathe. And then when we got down here, we consolidated all these sections so you get all that information in one nice view. We adjusted this background a little bit and tightened up sort of the space between this button and this section as well. And then basically brought all these together, used our space a little bit more to where we have the heading off to the side there. For these testimonials, we wanted to focus on one thing instead of having all the testimonials in view at one time. And then for the footer, we want to just utilize a little bit more of this horizontal space. So if we come back up and switch over, this is our new headline, like a little bit larger. We reduce our amount of colors. And we have everything all in one view as sort of the slider component. When we get to family benefits, it's broken up by this sort of divider line there, the organic one. And then we have all our benefits listed out with a nice button there. And then our FAQs are sort of stacked side by side. We get to our testimonial module and it's all contained in the card. We're looking at one testimony at a time. And I just realized that I did not copy over that arrow. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so and then we have that set up. And then our footer right here, we're basically just spacing everything out to where we have the logo in the center, social off to the side, and copyright and all other information on the right. And that basically wraps up the design of our lander. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I'll catch you in the next one.